Hey guys, Darby's here with another video for Warhammer Online, Return of Reckoning, the Age of Reckoning private server. This is going to be a series of videos going over all the different classes that Warhammer has, breaking them down into archetypes. This one's going to be on ranged DPS, and then I'll do the companion one on the destruction side, and then we'll move on to tanks, healers, and melee DPS. So if you're interested in starting this game, or you're just getting started and you're feeling overwhelmed by all the different classes, this will hopefully give you a good feel for what every class can do, their strengths and weaknesses, and maybe make that choice just a little bit easier for you. So let's start it off with my original class, one of my favorites still, the Bright Wizard. So the Bright Wizard is a ranged magical damage dealer, deals magical damage, not physical, like let's say a Shadow Warrior or Engineer would. They wear cloth armor, so some of the lightest armor in the game, and wield a two-handed staff as their main weapon. Their strengths, very mobile, very, very high single target damage, really good burst damage, an area of effect type damage, and a lot of instant cast spells. And you know what? If you like looking like a fence post, they're really good at that too. What are their downsides? Their weaknesses: a Bright Wizard has very low survivability. You deal self-damage, so as you cast your spells, you get magic damage back at yourself, which is undefendable. You can't block against. Makes your survivability really low. Cloth armor again, and you're not very solo friendly through all those reasons. So if you are someone who likes to play alone, the Bright Wizard probably isn't the class for you. And also, they look a little bit like a fire clown, just a little bit. What is a class mechanic? So every class in Warhammer has a special mechanic of some sort, whether this be summoning a pet or changing stances or some kind of career resource. The Bright Wizard has combustion. So it says it right there. Combustion is the Bright Wizard tool where as you build up spells, as you cast spells, your meter goes up from 1 to 100. As the meter fills, your chance to critically hit and your critical damage that you do goes up to 35% more crit and 100% more critical damage. But as you go up, you increase your chance and likelihood and the amount of damage you take back, all the way up to 100, where at rank 40, you'll take 750 damage hits to yourself. So good mechanic, very strong. That's probably why the Bright Wizard is so powerful. Specializations: every class has 3. Bright Wizards is Incineration, which is your single target burst type line. You have your Immolation line, which is your dot and delay damage line. And then you have your third, which is Conflagration, which is your AoE line. Finally, you have your class-defining abilities. So we're just going to list a few things that the Bright Wizard has. Fireball Barrage. You throw 5-6 fireballs at a target in one go. It's a channeled spell. Super powerful. Also does area of effect damage. One of their best abilities. Boiling Blood. That is their delayed damage tactic. It's one of their hardest, if not their hardest hitting ability. After 5 seconds, the dot on the target explodes, dealing massive damage to them. Super good at getting kills, super good at delaying your bursts to land an all-one timestamp. And finally, you have Annihilate, your AoE channel. You turn the floor around you and explode multiple times, damaging everything and every player around yourself. What is the Bright Wizard good in? He's good in warbands, great warband class. Really good in scenarios, just joining a party with some heals and blasting people from the back. Not so great in rank play. It's a melee meta, but other than that, Bright Wizard, very solid class. Good choice for someone who's used to playing a mage in another game. Very solid. So that's the Bright Wizard. Let's move on to the next one, which is going to be the Engineer, I think. Move on to the forces of the Dwarves. So what does the Engineer have? Engineer is a light armor class. It's a physical damage dealer. So unlike the Bright Wizard that does spell damage, this does physical damage and is mitigated by armor. They wear light armor, but they also get a self buff, so they can self armor buff. So they're a little bit tankier, quite a bit tankier than a Bright Wizard. Pretty much the equivalent to medium armor with that armor buff. They wield a spanner as their melee weapon, and as a ranged weapon, they have their rifle. What are their strengths? High survivability. Dwarf engineers are very survivable. They can get a keg that can heal them. They get that armor up we talked about. They get a turret that can boost their dodge and disrupt, and just make them really hard to kill as a ranged DPS by most other game standards. massive toolkit of abilities. They get one of the largest in the game between their stuns and their staggers and their knockbacks and their disarms and everything else that they get. They are very, very good at locking a lot of players down at one time while still putting out good damage. They have the longest range in the game. So an engineer and Magus, their companion class, have 150-foot range on most of their abilities, some even going up to 180, where other range might only have about 100 to 110. So they are very long range, and they also can get drunk on their own ale, which is, you know, a benefit to some people. What are their weaknesses? Immobile. For an engineer to do their damage, they have to plant themselves on the ground, and they have to build up their turrets and just sit there and wait for their damage buffs to tick up and then put out their damage. Not a bad thing if you're at a scenario or a keep defense, but if the fight is on the move, if it's going and moving, then maybe their damage is going to go down because they can't sit there and wait. What else? Your turrets, the pets that you put out, they die quick. They die to AoE, they die to focus damage, and because you're relying on that to buff you and also do damage, when it dies, it is pretty devastating. And also, your downside, you're kind of a short dwarf, which for some people does not give you that epic character feel, but I guess that's up to personal opinion. What is the class mechanic? So the dwarf mechanic is, it says here, mechanical gadgets. What that really means is turrets. The engineer can summon different kinds of turrets to assist them in battle. They can summon a grenade turret to do bombardment damage. They can summon a rifle turret that will snipe people, a flamethrower turret that will do AoE damage and also give them more buffs. They can put down a landmine to stagger people. They can put down a keg to heal people. So they get all these types of things to assist them in combat. What are their specializations? Rifleman. That is your single target, long range damage dealing spec. You're going to be blasting people from 150 to 180 feet away, doing high single target damage. Grenadier. That's the second one. It's a mid-range grenade spec. Lots of dots, lots of mid-range, kind of short, bursty type abilities, but more focused on sustained damage, more focused on AoE damage, ground targeted damage, and the like. Finally, you have Tinkerer. Tinkerer is their, kind of like their CC and utility spec. You get things in here like your beer keg to heal your party and yourself. You get your electromagnet to pull people in. You have some self buffs in that line as well. Utility, CC, that's what that line is all about. Classifying abilities for the engineer. Snipe. Snipe is their 180-foot undefendable gun blast, longest range ability in the game, super high hitting ability in the game, can't be defended against, can't be blocked, can't be dodged, super strong. Napalm grenade, throw some fire on the ground, does AoE damage to anyone who walks through it and as they stand in it, super cool ability. And then electromagnet that we talked about already, what this does is they put an item down on the ground that will then pull in multiple players to that point and snare them. So if you're running around with a Bright Wizard or a Slayer, you want to do some AoE damage, an engineer can run up, put down that electromagnet, suck in 6 to 9 people, and then the Slayers and Bright Wizards, and even the engineer can have at them. What kind of play does the engineer have? I mean, engineer is great by itself, very solo friendly. The engineer is good in warbands, good in cities, good in forts, good in open RVR, not very good at rank play. In scenarios, they can be kind of hit and miss sometimes, depending on how you spec your character. But they are a great range DPS. You'll like them if you've played, a hunter in WoW. If you played, any kind of ranged physical damage dealer in another game, you'll feel pretty confident with what a engineer can do. So finally, last but also least, the Shadow Warrior. This is the elf range DPS class, and they have some great things about them, but there's also a few things that might be lacking just a little bit. So they are another range physical damage dealer, but they also have a very viable melee spec. So at the same time, they're a range physical, but also like a melee physical damage dealer. They wear light armor, but with their melee spec, they get an armor buff, which makes them closer to medium heavy armor. They can wield a one-handed sword, and then they wield a bow. So you'll be just in the videos, they can dual wield. In the actual game, one-handed sword and a bow. What are their strengths? They have the highest mobility in the game. They can get a 3-second knockdown and a snare on the move, and most of their abilities can be fired off on the move, so they can kite like almost no other class in the game. Dealing damage can be very hard to catch. They can do a self knockback to get away from people attacking them. They have a lot of stuff that they can do to keep the fight moving. So best mobility in the game. Their melee spec is very, very solid to the point of being absolutely overpowered. They get super amounts of parry and high auto attack damage. They get a teleport to target to get in there while still being able to use most of their ranged abilities, even in their melee spec. Melee spec is very, very strong. And it's easy. And finally, as a last little bonus, it's easy to kind of figure out a name for your character. Some variation of Legolas, and you'll be set to go. What is the weakness of the Shadow Warrior? Weakness is they're the weakest ranged physical damage dealer in the game. They have the least amount of damage. And in a game where utility is nice and mobility is nice and all those things are great, what actually will win the fight is not those things, it's damage. And if you're lacking in damage, then you're lacking on the class. Stance dancing. So the mechanic of the Shadow Warrior is kind of moving into different stances, different modes. It can be interesting, it can be fun, but it can also be frustrating when you're in a fight and you need to use one specific ability and you can't use it because you're not in the right stance. So you got to switch, and that just takes time. And if you're not really on the ball with that stuff, it can be very frustrating to play. Arrow travel time. So some spells in this game have no travel time at all. A lot of the Shadow Warrior spells have a travel time on their arrows, and that means that you can fire a 3-second cast arrow, and as it's flying to target, the person dies. So really, it's more like a 5-second arrow, and that's just a little too long sometimes in open RVR. Also, you gotta play an elf. I mean, some people might like that, but you gotta play an elf. Class mechanic, as it says here, strategic maneuvers, but really that's stance dancing. You're alternating between 3 different stances: your skirmish, your assault, and your scout stance. So one is going to be better at long range bow strikes, one is better on the move strikes, and one is better at melee mode. As you switch between them, they will give you different buffs, but they will also give you access to different abilities and lock other abilities out. So you want to make sure that you are very confident about what you're switching into when you switch stances. What are the specializations? A scout stance, like we talked about, is your long range stance. This is where you're going to get things like Eagle Eye and Festering Arrow, where you plant yourself on the ground, shoot your shot, and you're playing it more like a caster, where you're just standing there shooting your arrows from the back lines. Then you have Assault stance, which is their melee mode. You take away a lot of that range, and now you're focused on getting up close and personal with that sword, giving up that bow. You're running in there, slashing, doing your 3-second knockdowns, wrecking people from up close and personal. You have your Skirmisher stance finally. That's the on-the-move one. Here you're going to be having things like Spiral Fletch Arrow or your heal debuff, things where they're instant cast or they're castable on the move. Your auto attack keeps firing while you're on the move in your Skirmish stance. So that's going to be your kiting and general chasing after target stance and abilities in that tree. Class-defining abilities, Festering Arrow. So this is a 3-second cast. It does amazing damage, can become undefendable or unmitigatable damage. With the right amount of tactics and abilities, this can hit for huge amounts. Fester Bombs are what they used to be called. Shadow Step, that is the melee ability. You teleport to your target, kind of vanish and teleport to them. It's a get up and close and personal tool. It's a mobility tool. At the same time, it also buffs your defenses, so you're not only getting to target, but now your parry, dodge, disrupt, all that stuff is way higher. Finally, you have Eye Shot, which is your 3-second knockdown. There's only 2 classes really in the game that get a 3-second range knockdown. Shadow Warrior is one of them. Can be used from a distance. It is very solid. Sometimes you want to pick someone off in the back line. Someone's coming to you, someone's running away. It's a great kiting tool. It's a great killing tool. It's a great catching tool. Eye Shot, pretty good. What types of play does the Shadow Warrior do? In range mode, you're going to probably do scenarios. You're going to do open RVR, just roaming the world. That'll be pretty good. If you are an Assault Shadow Warrior, you're going to be doing 6v6 ranked scenarios. Also, you're going to be great in them. Where does the Shadow Warrior lack? You're not really a warband class. In either of your builds, you don't really have a class-defining AoE set that will pull people to get you, as opposed to a Bright Wizard or a Slayer. so you kind of fall behind in warband play. If you played again a hunter in another game, you'll probably like them, especially being able to swap between melee and ranged. They're a great class when they're playing melee. They're in line for some buffs, but they have some strengths about them, and maybe they're just waiting for the right player to play one and show what it can be. So those are the 3 ranged DPS on Order side. I'm going to make my companion video to this on the Forces and the ranged DPS on Destro, the Sorcerer, the Magus, and the Squig Herder. Got to think about that one for a second. So thank you for watching this video, guys, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and subscribe if you so choose, or come catch me on Twitch, and I will see you all next time, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.